Soccerex Connected, a very good afternoon, heading, of course, now into the evening here in London at our digital HQ in London Bridge production team from all around the world at this global event, including in South Africa. We're delighted to have your company at this 5-day event. Today is sponsored by Cell Nutrition Sport, and we're focusing predominantly on health, mental and physical, medicine and analytics. And as a result of all of that, we're asking you, if you want to win that signed shirt, all you have to do is get in contact with us via @Soccerex, use the hashtag Soccerex Connected, and tell us your favorite football stat or fact, as geeky or as quirky as you like, and the winner will get to pick from a vast array of different signed shirts we've got on offer here at Soccerex. And if you want to see the photo of what's available, go to @Soccerex. I can tell you, broadly speaking, from the ones that I've seen, Deco is there, Lowry Lindsay, US women's national team, Carlos Alberto, Jean-Pierre Papin, Louis Saha, Manchester United white away shirt, and many, many more. Give me a fun football fact or stat to @Soccerex and use the hashtag Soccerex Connected. Oscar King has been in contact and said Mario Balotelli had just one assist during his time at Manchester City, setting up, who else? Aguero. We all remember that goal for one of the greatest moments in Premier League history. And James has been in contact as well. And on our next panel, we've got Stiliyan Petrov, and he can listen closely to this and maybe verify for us a little bit later, because James says when Stiliyan signed for Celtic, he was unreachable. He was away on holiday with his mates. He had a hangover and his phone had died because he hadn't paid the bill. So Celtic actually had to sign him through a friend. That's the stat I've been given, Stiliyan, and I'm sure we can put this to you a little bit later and find out if there's any truth to that. I think he's nodding his head, so I believe we can verify that straight from the horse's mouth. So Stiliyan is part of one of our next panels, and we've got two to go. After this, we'll focus on the 1930 World Cup and look at some Soccerex heritage, and then we'll end the day by looking back at some of the highlights of the day. But this is a really important panel, and we've got a stellar lineup for you. It's called Out of Sight, Out of Mind, and football's power to highlight the importance of mental health in wider society, in particular for men, has been a focus of the last few years. In England, for instance, the FA ran a very successful Heads Up campaign. But the key question in the context of this panel is the game doing enough to help those who leave football? And as we've often seen, when a footballer stops playing, their mental health can take a real hit. So specifically on the front of mental health, we will ask that question: is the football community rallying around its ex-players and supporting them to ensure their transition out of the game is a healthy one, especially mentally speaking? So this is Out of Sight, Out of Mind, and as I've already alluded to, delighted to welcome Stiliyan Petrov, the founder of Player for Player, an ex-Celtic and Aston Villa midfielder. Hopefully he's paid his phone bill and as a consequence is now fully reachable to all players. Alongside him, Amir Lowry, the player relations manager at the MLSPA. We're also joined by Clarke Carlisle, another former professional footballer, won caps for England under-21s and played for Burnley, an ex-chair of the PFA and now a mental health and well-being consultant. Great to have you with us, Clarke. And Hayley Jarvis is part of this panel as well, the head of physical activity at Mind. And your moderator is the founder of the Book of Man. It's none other than Martin Robinson. Martin, this is going to be a really great panel. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, this is an exceptional panel. We've got to discuss some important issues. So I'm just going to crack straight on, because I think we've got some incredible experts here who can give great insights into the solutions that the game can take around mental health. So firstly, I just wanted to look at club level. So what do clubs need to do to better support players' mental health? It's a broad question, but let's get into it. So Clarke, could we start with you, please?
Yes, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are listening in the world. Martin, it's a very simple question, isn't it? And we seem to try and address mental health and football as two very simple entities. Well, the solution is incredibly difficult. You know, no matter where in the world you are, football constitutes many different football clubs, even though they all fall under one banner. And I believe that the only way to approach mental health is to have a uniform application of a system across the entire player base. Now, you know, in the introduction, it was alluded to that, you know, this is more a male focus than a female focus. But what you find in professional sports and in elite sport is that there's a hegemonic masculinity. And when you have females who are elite athletes, they adopt certain characteristics that would, you know, historically have been as engendered male characteristics. It's the same in any high performance industry. You know, you find female CEOs and executives seem to adopt these, what we would normally call masculine characteristics. And all of these play into the way that we approach our mental health. It's that stiff upper lip, you know, the keeping everything internalized, the not showing any signs of perceived weakness. Now, all of this has to be countered in the same way at every club in every country. And I believe that is by having a system that is without the coaching system. You have personnel within the club who are connected to the players but don't feed into that coaching system. And it's exactly the same system if you're in the lowest tier of football in that country as if you're in the highest tier. Because oftentimes when it comes to mental health, if someone has had a support system, so they're at a fantastic club that gives them a holistic care with regards to their well-being, and then they transfer overnight, as often happens within the game, and then all of a sudden they're left without a support system in a transition period that's going to be one of the toughest in their career, that's when they feel bereft, and it's worse than not having any support system in the first place.
Look, you know what, I want to take probably a step back. And when I was growing up, there wasn't referring it as a mental health. There was a psychological relief or psychological support. About when I was growing up, I was told that exercising, football, sport is good for the mental health. So how all of a sudden we find ourselves in a situation where the mental health is a huge issue in sport, but not just in sport, in a general society. So as much as we're trying to look into kids, my growing up, I always like to give up examples, my own examples, because you were talking about masculine individuals and can we share, can we show our weaknesses? Are we strong enough to do that? Is he actually changing the culture? Is the culture changing? And maybe some individual or part of the football industry are not ready to change that culture. So I'm really confused to really understand of what exactly the mental health issues and how we can deal with it, because you're talking about the right things is what's the solution for it?
It's a brilliant point, Stiliyan, and this is why, said in the beginning, it's not a simple answer. A mental health issue is incredibly nuanced. It's such an amorphous issue that crosses. If we take the population of the world and we say that everyone needs a mental health action plan, there are going to be 7 billion different ones, because we're all individual and we all need different things. So here in the UK, we have something called the 5 steps to well-being, and physical activity is one of those. But this is where it gets nuanced and a little bit awkward, because when physical activity actually is your vocation and becomes your identity and your driver, then it then becomes a stressor and not something that actually supports or balances your mental health. You know, your ability to compete at the highest level and achieve, be in peak physical fitness, perform on call, all of these things become stressors and they override the natural chemical benefits, the endorphins and the adrenaline that you get from physical activity. So this is why it's not a simple answer, Stiliyan, and this is part of the reason why I believe academic research is the way forward. You know, where we will produce something within sport and within football, but it will only suit football. That will have to be taken as a template crossed into another sport or another industry, and then that industry then has to do their research to see what bits suit them and what they have to add in, because they need to identify the specific stresses for that industry. And that's why it's so complex, because what's going on at Manchester City, for example, isn't what's going on at Bolton Wanderers. You know, we're the same industry, same sport, but there are very different dynamics that are affecting what's constituting stress and anxiety for the individual in that club.
You know, the interesting thing is the build-up. Sometimes we forget that we work with individuals, we work with the person rather than the player, and then it's a certain process of how they develop. I experienced it myself. I had a very demanding dad, and this is something that I can share. I had a very demanding dad. He won't let me be weak. He won't let me show weakness at all. He will want me to do every step in the right way. He will demand from me to be there first, to show the right example. He won't let me cry. He won't let me be weak. And I'm feeling like, you know, sometimes I need a bit of love. Sometimes I need the support. But my culture, my upbringing thing, it was the same. My dad will push me to the limit, because his motto is, if I don't push you, you won't succeed. If I don't demand from you, you won't succeed. I don't want you to cry. I don't want you to complain. I don't want you to be to act like a kid. I want you to act like a man. But you always are forgetting that I was 14, 15, 16 years old boy. I was still a kid. So when you move into the next career, and that's coaching, that's why I wanted to ask you about, does the coaches need to education? Because I became a coach and I had to learn, I had to update, I had to understand what the culture is, because the culture is not the same anymore. It wasn't what I believed in, and what my dad taught me actually is completely different. So as much as we're talking about mental health, kids, does the coaches need to be educated? Do they have to go through this process all the time to be reminded what it's all about and how important mental health is?
It is incredibly complicated, isn't it? And I think it's really important that we all remember we've all got mental health, and we have to take care of it. And often when we talk about mental health, everyone jumps to a mental health problem or condition, and actually we need to make sure there's pathway and a support system there, so that if a player or somebody in a club is struggling with their mental health, that they can get that support. As Clarke's saying, that's really important. But also we need to make sure the environment's there and it's good in the first place to support everyone to stay well and to thrive in this environment. And I guess I was just thinking about the different layers there. It's the individual, isn't it? But also that the club itself, the system, so the leagues and the administration, but also societal challenges as well. It is such a huge topic, and we know some research from this, but some of that's out of date. And certainly we know about transitions and change and times of uncertainty. And I guess I was thinking about right now how it must be such a struggle for players having to get up and go to work when the rest of the country has been told to stay at home, and knowing some people can't be with their families, or people are experiencing bereavement, and so many things going on in this COVID world, and that must be having a profound effect on their mental health right now. So it's not a simple solution, is it, Clarke? It's really challenging.
Sure. I'll just jump in there just to follow up a little bit on the idea of culture and the role of masculinity within this, particularly between players and your peers within the game. And what an effect that has. And I wonder if we could just get your thoughts on that, Amir, and just how those expectations that you have around your presence as a player within a club is affected by everyone else who is another player who might be your rival, and all that kind of thing.
Certainly. And, you know, thanks for having me on and hosting this great forum. You know, I was listening intently as everyone was opening there, and you know, I think the answer is partially related to what everyone has shared a bit of. You know, I really especially like the starting with the conversation around culture, you know, and that's from youth sports to the way, you know, sports are perceived by fans and the outer world, on up through, you know, coaches and management. There really has to be a cultural change so that players are given the space and the opportunity to express their needs around mental health, to express whatever it is they may be going through off the field in a safe and confidential manner that allows them to help navigate those things. At the end of the day, we want, any footballing entity is going to want the best product on the field. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of everybody's personal health and mental health off the field. So that cultural shift is a broad concept, right? And we've all touched on how big that is. I would say, just to, keep it somewhat short, the peers as opposition is always going to be a difficult kind of construct when it comes to mental health and players. You're only going to get a certain amount of support from your peers. We have to understand that. And we have to, like Clarke said, provide systems and opportunities that live outside of the peer relationship and outside of the coach-player relationship as well. At times, the peer-to-peer relationship even, that makes it more difficult because, as we're saying, with the focus on masculinity, you can't, and not showing weakness, like Stiliyan was saying, you can't show weakness to teammates who are competing for the same spot. At the end of the day, that's going to work against you in a big way. And footballers know that. And, we work around that and make sure to internalize things and push them down. And there need to be other outlets for us. And then I would just say, to another question Stiliyan had around coaching, which ties together with the culture and this concept of the machismo and it being a barrier, male players especially, expressing things and, seeking out mental health. I think coaches from a youth level need to be taught in a certain way an emotional intelligence and have an emotional capacity to see what's going on. And then back to Clarke's point, we need to have systems there in place so that they, as a coach, it's not their primary, expertise to be mental health professionals, but they need a resource there. So it's systematic. That's a long answer. But I think we can get there with making some small changes.
Amir, obviously I've played for some very good clubs. I've captained the clubs, and I remember having one of my early, it's at 2009, the club that I was playing for decided to go for a psychologist. That's when it was sent psychologist. He will come and he's sued. He will have his own room. But you can see some of the players are struggling. They want to share. They want to let their fears in front of somebody, but they will be scared to go to that room. They'll be scared to that person because, like you mentioned, that they will feel embarrassed in front of everybody else. You'll be seen weak. You'll be seen that you've got a problem, and everybody asking this question. So, me as a captain, I had so many players coming to me, and I'll suggest you say, well, we've got a new role in the club. Why you to go and see? No. I can't be seen. I just can't be seen weak. I don't want anybody to know that I have problems. So as much as I was a captain of the team and you try to concentrate on what is right or wrong for the dressing room, you have to deal with other people's mental issues. And that's why I realized myself how important the mental comfortable space is, and how difficult it is for somebody to share his problems and his issues, and he don't want to be seen. We as players, and Clarke mentioned earlier about, we don't like to be seen weak. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody want to let his problems out there, and people look at you and go, you know what? What's wrong with you? Why are you going to that room? What's the problem? And then if you compete, you mentioned, with somebody in the team, they're going to use that. So us, we just put a fake mask. we pretend that everything is okay, and we go through a brick wall. That's why I was seeing it, and it's really difficult topic to talk about and discuss and to come up with the right solution as well.
And I think that's a real challenge, and that echoes what I think sports psychologists know, talking to some of them that work in clubs, know that people don't want to go in their room to talk to them. And actually some of the most powerful conversations have actually been from physios. So when people have been injured and then opening up to a physio. So I guess that kind of reinforces that point about everyone having a understanding of mental health or mental health literacy or training. So that if it is a physio, because if you're injured, you're spending a lot of time with them and you might open up a bit more and build that relationship, that they then know, you know, they're not expected to be a mental health expert, but they know how to get you some support and where to signpost you to, because it's such a shame that stigma exists, but completely understand why that is the case. And I think the people around the club recognise that as well, whether that's the chaplains who offer that service. They know that people are concerned about going to talk to them and what it's viewed as, and so it's finding other ways to have that important conversation.
I think they're excellent points well made, and they all operate from the working assumption that is true in the way that we address mental health, and that underpins why it will always be as bad as it currently is. And that's that our mental health support systems in society, not just in football, are all reactionary and disaster recovery. And as long as our systems are reactionary and disaster recovery, we will continually have people getting to the edge before any kind of help is put their way. I truly believe that we need to twist our focus not just on supporting people when they hit crisis point, which obviously is incredibly important, but if we switch our attention and our funds and our time to having these personnel who are within football clubs, but they are educating and they are qualified observers and they are educated signposters who I think the biggest flaw with our mental health support system in the entire country is that it's based on self-report. And self-report is one of the hardest things to do, even more so when you have an adverse mental health issue. Whereas if you have an opt-out service, so the professional is within the club, they are there in a different capacity, like I said, educating, talking to lads about not just understanding mental health issues, but understanding their whole self, understanding societal issues, and they're part of this ongoing platform of continual personal development. They're the ones who can have the objective insight into players' behaviour because they know them on a daily basis. They are the ones who can step in and actively intervene when they see a player who isn't at crisis, but is showing some of the early flag symptoms that there might be something going on. So intervention, early intervention, education and maintenance of good well-being is the solution to our mental health issues, not making our disaster or crisis recovery systems better.
That's a brilliant point. I mean, I think that's really important. And I just wondered, Hayley, if you could just follow up on that a little bit for us, just in terms of kind of from your perspective of mind, like the kind of things that you work on that are about prevention and education and are coming at it from, slightly outside the game. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, definitely. And I completely agree with Clarke that the focus needs to be on early intervention. And certainly at Minds, that's part of what we're trying to do by raising awareness of mental health. And by that, we mean not just mental illness, good mental health and how we protect it and take care of it. Clarke's already mentioned the 5 ways to wellbeing around getting active, but connecting with others, taking notice, learning, give. All those things can really strengthen our well-being, and we can do every day. So I guess we came into the game predominantly through our work with the English Football League. So we've been working with them since 2018 with our logo on the back of all of the shirts, reaching millions of fans. And I guess one of our key aims was to help break that stigma around mental health down with fans and with the whole of the football family. And we know there's been some great work going on prior to that with the PFA in terms of some of the sessions that they're putting on. But I guess we wanted to look at what was missing. So we've been providing support to clubs across the EFL, from anyone from the academy staff to directors and CEOs, around promoting good mental health in the work, sort of in a club environment, really tailored to them, and reaching about 2,500 staff. So, you know, it's simple steps. It's about having those conversations. It's about promoting the wellbeing strategies. Clarke's mentioned action plans, and helping us all to understand how we can sort of take care of our own mental health, how we can spot when someone else is struggling, because it's very hard to reach out for help, as Clarke's explained, but also how we signpost people, and we don't need to make them experts. So there's a lot happening around education. There's some clubs that are really forward thinking with sort of strategies and investment into posts in clubs, work around academies, and thinking around helping people with their next steps. And sort of some clubs, you know, going over and above, certainly finding work experience for people, that the players are sort of coming towards the end. And actually it's how we sort of formalise that more, really. So yeah, definitely the focus needs to be on promoting positive mental health of everyone, making sure the services are there, and I guess making sure they're maintained. I think that's a really important message right now, knowing the impact of coronavirus, the fact that budgets are really tight across all industries, and it could be very easy to cut things like the mental health support services. So making sure that's protected, but making sure we focus on positive mental health. So yeah, there's good steps, but I think there's so much more that can be done, and there's a lot of certainly a lot of intention and good intention around things like the mentally healthy football declaration that was launched as part of Heads Up. But we need action, and we need, I guess, it to be consistent. Like Clarke said, if you move from one club to another, you want that support everywhere, and sadly that's not the case right now.
Certainly. Amir, can you give us a bit of insight into how things are in the States and what's been happening, and if things have been developing and improving over the last few years over there?
Yeah, well, you know, I think as far as the Mind logo on the EFL jerseys is it's something that we have it in the football world, the soccer world here in the US. I don't think there's been as big a focus that is translated in the soccer world, you know, but I do think that there are some different apps and applications, and more athletes are starting to talk about the importance of it. You know, it's growing in its nature and its, I guess, in its importance as we look at every phase of the game, but it's really just not where it needs to be. And, you know, I would say this curriculum that we're talking about, that everyone needs a base understanding of, you know, what are warning signs, or what are signals that a player needs help or a person needs help, or what are basic things that coaches or physios or other folks around the game can do. I think that's something that we need, you know, more so than anything here to you know, start establishing a more positive culture of mental health. And you know, I think there's a long way to go and a lot of work to be done. I haven't seen consistently applied solutions here yet. And I think that, you know, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I think that this issue is a bit further progressed in the UK, and, you know, as when it comes to football, at least, definitely it's further advanced in other countries.
No, it's funny you saying that, Amir, and what I've noticed here, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but we start talking about the real issues in the mental health. It's getting better. There's more stats out there, but we start talking about it when we actually start to transition out from football or any sport. That's where we actually going out and saying, oh, I had an issue. This is a problem for me. I have a mental breakdown. I couldn't deal with that. And the important now is more younger and younger players coming out, not just in the men's football, but in the women's football, coming out and talking about more openly. They're not scared. They use their social platforms quite well. But we still, the majority of the former players will come out and talk about that when everything is actually finished, when the problem is caused, when they didn't try to actually work on it while they were playing, because is there a fear not finding a club? Is there a fear that the coach won't play you? If he's a young player, is there a fear that you won't get the next contract as a young boy? What is the fear? Why we talk about this so late rather than bring these issues earlier?
You make a wonderful point there, Stiliyan, and that's all based on perception of what mental health is and working on your mental health issues. You know, it amazes me that Amir says that they're further behind on the bell curve in America, because qualified talking therapies in the States, you know, anybody has a therapist and talks to them, you know, on a regular basis. And that's a fundamental part of maintaining that well-being journey. But what you're talking about there, Stiliyan, is we don't confront our problems when we're current professionals because we feel that it displays a sign of weakness and it will take away from us. We need to change the perception that addressing your mental health issues and making yourself, you know, mentally healthy and more resilient and emotionally stable actually gives you the capacity to do more as a professional. It gives you the capacity to do more as a human being. You know, what I found, what you said just, you know, is just resonating all over the place. My head's ringing, is we compartmentalize, and you learn to do that as a professional athlete. You know, it's like, oh, I'll never celebrate Christmas while I'm a pro. It's okay, box it off until 35. Oh, I'll never be able to go to these parties with my friends. Oh, box it off until I retire. Oh, you know, I've got this issue that I need sorted. Do you know what? Let's just box it off until we retire and then we'll deal with it, because we don't want anything to interfere with our progress on this highly competitive professional journey. Now we need to take, right, we can leave Christmas dinner and parties with friends in that box.
No, don't. I love the Christmas dinner. Don't, please, let me have it.
Take addressing our mental health and well-being out of that box. And we need to show players worldwide that addressing whatever this thing is now will actually improve you as a human. It will improve your capacity to train. It'll improve your capacity and ability to focus and perform when required. And it might make those Christmas dinners 2 or 3 years further down the line.
If I could, I think that's absolutely spot on. And I would build on your point there. I think sometimes when you see footballers stepping out of the lane of soccer, whether it be, you know, for business pursuits or anything, you know, Marcus Rashford, you know, gets a lot of stick for just speaking out, right, on his beliefs. Whenever a footballer steps out of their lane, and I'd argue that we need that as people, right? That there's a certain segment of the game and fans who say, oh, stick to football, right? You know, and they don't want us to speak our mind on other things. A segment of people don't want us to speak our mind on certain things or don't want us to express ourselves in different ways. And that extends sometimes to coaches and management. And if that stigma, if we can break some of that down as well, while we're still playing, and make it more acceptable to express ourselves in different ways, I think we'd start to get to some things, and I'm relating it to the transition, that would help every athlete in their current playing career, right? Because they'd be working towards something that could sustain them, hopefully, in their post-playing career. But if there's a stigma and a pressure and, you know, a fear that, oh, I can't be perceived this way, then that's not something that athletes, you know, really do. And, you know, I would just say, with focusing on the transition again, it's so important that we leave that mentality behind, because it's only that compartmentalization that you talked about and the toughness and everything that we're talking about. It only works in football or high level sport like that. You can't take that same mentality to a work environment and just start compartmentalizing things or pushing things to the side. You need to be expressive, and you need to learn how to navigate those issues. So just wanted to build on your point there, Clarke.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and it's all part and parcel, isn't it, of what makes it so difficult to accept retirement from professional sport. Because that identity that you hold as a professional footballer, it's not just one that is taken, it's one that's imposed upon you in everyday situations where I remember when we were having a briefing, I was saying, you know, if we went and lost a match on a Saturday and had the audacity to go out for dinner on a Sunday with a family, there would be outroar. You know, the fans would be, oh, how dare you smiling, enjoying yourselves when you perform so badly yesterday. It's as though that mantle, your vocational mantle, dictates your value as a human being, and we have to break that bond. We must. It's a vocational self, and we are whole humans. There are so many different roles that we fulfill in our life that contribute to our worth, not just what we give on a football pitch, not just what we give in an office, or not just what we give in our education. We have many, many different things that contribute. And if we can bring an understanding of the whole self to players from when they come into the game and build on that throughout their career, then hopefully the transition into retirement won't be as great. Okay. I'm definitely not going to say that we'll take that chasm and the impact of retirement away, because I don't think you ever can. But when you leave professional sport, you know, as much as you are prepared for going into the next career, for that transition, the gaping hole that is left in your life, you're institutionalized by that sport. You know, you're told when to get up, what to wear, who to talk to, who not to talk to, what to eat. You know, there are times of the year where beginning of the season, where hope abounds for everyone everywhere. And then all of a sudden you go from being someone to being obsolete. And that gap is it's almost impossible to bridge.
I don't think you can call it a gap. I think it's bigger than that. When I retire, this is something that I want to address if it's possible, Martin. Maybe we can switch off and move to that transition and the mental issues and challenges. Is I couldn't find out why I was waking up in the morning. I had to find another purpose. I had to find out something useful for myself. What I'm gonna do. I couldn't understand the void, the emptiness for not being accountable for something, because when I was a player, I had my purpose, I had my goal, I had my clear objective of what I have to do. They were looking after me, everything was there, everything was prepared, I had the schedule. But when that was taken away from me, mentally, I dropped. Mentally, I was asking myself a question: what is next? How do I prepare for that? Have I had the chance to prepare for that? I don't think so. There were so many questions. There were so many issues that I have to clear in my head about what I'm going to do next. Was I ready for that transition? Yes. I was talking about it. Yes. I was thinking about it. Have I really done anything to do and prepare for it? Nothing at all. I've changed so many agents. I've changed so many financial advisors. Have they actually prepared me for what was coming after that retiring? Nothing at all. Nothing at all. And I don't think anybody who's not been through that journey can prepare you and can advise you what exactly is happening. And maybe Hayley will jump on here about the mental issues about that transition, because I've read something about in 2019, the 650 more cases were recorded on PFA counseling line. And is it an issue for most of the players because of the COVID at the moment, or this is the issue that has been there for a long time and people actually coming out and sharing it more?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Thanks for lining me up there. I think firstly, dealing with retirement and that change, it's like a grief, isn't it? It's a huge loss and any uncertainty. And I can't imagine what it must be like to go through, and I wouldn't even try to. And I think you're right, it has to be players that have been through that, supporting others to go through it. But in terms of that increase that we're seeing, and certainly we know over sort of the last few years, as general awareness is raised around mental health, whenever there's a big campaign, we see an uptake in people reaching out to mental health services. So whether it was the Royals and the marathon, when everyone wore their heads together banner and the Royals were first talking about mental health, that awareness results in people seeking action, because we're talking about it. Some people will realise for the first time, that's what's going on for me. I've been struggling. I didn't even know what these feelings were. And then it's prompted them to get help and support. So we see that after big campaigns. The same in organisations. Every time there is training or there's a real spotlight on mental health, there is often a spike in people reaching out for support or actually being honest about why they're off sick. And actually that's a good thing, because it's showing that people are taking that information on board and then seeking help. During COVID, we did see we've seen a spike in people sort of experiencing mental health problems for the first time. And we're seeing that in the general population, that people have really been struggling. It's been a roller coaster. That kind of has started to plateau a little, and then people that had existing mental health problems, 2/3 of them told us that their mental health got worse. So people that have perhaps just been managing to struggle, get through the day-to-day life, and then not being able to see their friends and family, do the things that they normally do to take care of themselves. Their appointments have probably stopped. Has meant that their mental health has got worse. So I guess we see people seeking help and support is a positive. The more we raise awareness, the more we educate, the more that will happen. But certainly through COVID, just in October, we had double the calls to our helpline in October than what we normally receive. So I think we're going to see that trend for some time. And as we transition through COVID, it's almost like we've got a second wave, this mental health wave. All of the NHS workers, everyone that's had to sort of carry on, footballers have had to play in quite challenging circumstances, and things are happening around them with their friends and families. That's going to have an impact. So I think that's only going to grow, sadly. But the stuff that we can all do around sort of taking care of our mental health positively.
That's great. I'm just going to jump in there just for the final couple of questions. Firstly, I did want to bring up social media, just because it's particularly been in the news, certainly this last week, with some racial abuse of players, including Marcus Rashford, and various other things going on. And I think that's really, highlighted social media and how much of a role that has in players' lives at the moment, probably for good and bad. But I mean, what kind of measures or approaches should be taken by clubs, I guess, to look after the players in that kind of wild west of Twitter? Clarke, should we start with you?
Yeah, again, it's quite a difficult one, this, isn't it? Because it's a free speech platform. When social media first came out, I just towards the back end of my career was probably the advent, of serious Twitter, etc., and stuff like that. And I thought it was a magnificent thing to bridge that gap between players and supporters, because it had grown massive since the Premier League money came in, and the distance between player and supporter seemed huge. But now there was this platform where there could be direct interaction, and I thought that was a wonderful thing if used responsibly. The difference now is that we have a generation of players who they've been brought up with social media. This is their medium for communication. This is their medium for expression. And it was very easy for someone of my age to dip my toe into it and then say, do you know what? That's not for me. I'm just going to use it for business purposes. But when you have a younger generation where this is their way of connecting with their peers, with their family, with their friends, it's not as simple a solution as that. So my suggestion is for the individual to be guarded, because sadly there will be portions of society with nefarious intent. The individual has no control over that because this is a free platform. But the other side of that coin is you have confidence in a platform when you know that it's policed and administered effectively. You know, this is why there's been such outrage about racism in the terraces and the overt racism that we're still seeing nowadays. It's a criminal offence, Martin. You know, so we're talking about these guys, maybe it might have upset him, it might have not. Whether it's upset him or not is irrelevant. This is a criminal act. You know, if said player was to go into a supermarket and just steal something the one time, everyone would expect law and order to come down on him because it's a criminal act. So why isn't the same approach taken to these acts of racism and discrimination on social media? Yes, I get that it's very difficult to police. Yes, I get that it's a large-scale operation, but it's one that has to be done so that players and the public can use these platforms with just comfort and use them for their intended purpose.
Absolutely.
I think the social media platform, the action should be taken firstly from the social media platform themselves. I think they should be more responsible. You must understand the way you give everybody a platform to have an opinion. There is always going to be issues. If we are not careful, I don't know if I need to formulate this, but if we are not careful, we're going to lose another generation through all these issues, and we won't be able to educate them. And if we don't act, if we don't put a plan together, and if we don't act together, I think we'll definitely lose that generation, and it will become harder and harder to control it going forward.
For sure. Just final question. We're a bit running out of time, but I just wanted to go back through everyone and just ask you all, like, what makes you feel positive about mental health support, how it's changing, what's developing, and if you do, what about it is making you feel more positive about it? We'll just stick with you, Stiliyan, first, please.
What is changing is definitely changing from the time when I was growing up. Let me put it that way. Young players and people around the globe is having a voice now. They're seeing the issue, they want to act, and I'm really confident that everybody is working together to deal with this issue. So I'm quite encouraged, and I'm looking forward to see what's going to be done and how we're going to progress with it.
Sure. Clarke?
I sit here as a product of our crisis recovery services here in England. You know, I'm testament to the NHS, to the PFA support, to Sporting Chance. That's what makes me positive, Martin. I know that it's kept me alive, and I know that it will keep others alive. It's with that I want to take that experience away from the next generation. I want to steer them into education, early intervention and prevention, so they don't need to go through my experiences.
Hayley?
I was saying, guys, so we're all talking about it. It's really positive. Tomorrow's Time to Talk Day, a national day of talking. It's on the agenda. It's on the back of shirts. It's now about action. There's been some great action, and we need to see more. So today, FA have launched mental health champions for refereeing. So the grassroots, we need more things like that. We need them to be consistent.
Thank you. And Amir?
Yeah, I would just quickly close by saying, this conversation is key to forward progress and more conversations like this platform, and just continuing to engage, that's gonna drive us forward.
That's brilliant. Well, thanks so much. We've reached the end, sadly, but thanks for this amazing and exceptional panel. That was a really stimulating conversation. So thanks very much to everyone, and back to the studio.